RAILUP, the Future Mobility podcast with innovators and leaders of the ecosystem. Presented by Sebastian Sperker.
In this episode, we will talk about the new way of traveling right to the start of the Summer Olympic Games in 2028 in Los Angeles, California. Our guest today is Joshua Dominic, the founder and CEO of the fresh startup Dreamstar Lines. We will explore his vision to introduce a premium overnight passenger train service in the US. So let's get started. Hi Joshua, and welcome to RAILUP, the podcast. And we start, of course, with the question, so are you rather innovator or a leader?
I think you have to be a little bit of both in kind of doing what you're doing. So in the case of Rail, I'm leading some innovation in the US with my team, of course.
To start our podcast, we will go back in history when a Belgian businessman from Europe named George Knucklemakers was inspired by the comfortable Pullman sleeping cars he saw in the US. With this inspiration, he founded the legendary Orient Express and transformed the experience of elegant international travel in Europe. And almost 150 years later, a businessman now from the US get inspired by the European night trains and launched his company Dreamstar Lines to reintroduce premium night trains in the US. So, as a founder, Joshua, of this company, what inspires you to enter in the rail business?
Thanks for having me on the show. I'm really excited to share with your audience kind of what we're doing. Dreamstar, it's funny, I get that question a lot, like, how did you get involved in rail? And the usual answer is, well, I tried to prove it was a bad idea. So I had taken night trains all over Europe as well as in Asia. And I thought, boy, this is great. Why don't we do this in the US? And like most Americans that have this experience, I did absolutely nothing with it for years. Until one day I was at a point in my life where I was like, what do I want to do next? Like I've done a lot the last 5-10 years. What do I want to do for the next? And I'd had this idea for like, hey, what if we did like a night train service? It became real for me when I started traveling on what I call the medium distance segment, often in the US. And it was like, it might only be a 90-minute flight, but like door to door, you're looking at, it takes like 5 hours, over 5 hours sometimes. So I recently was I flew up to the Bay Area and it took me over 5 hours to go door to door. And I was like, this is crazy that a 90-minute flight is taking this long after traffic, getting through security. And so I was just fed up and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go out and just prove that this couldn't be done once and for all. Like I'm going to go and trying to say, that's the reason nobody wants this. And the more I kept kind of stress testing the idea, the more it started to look like it made a whole lot of sense. And this culminated in us signing an agreement with one of the host railroads, I'm sure you and your audience know. In the US, most of the track is owned by private companies, and we were able to work with one of the private companies towards using their tracks to run our service in the evening. So that's the short story of how I got into rail.
Let's speak a little bit about the market and the challenges and opportunities in the US. Why do you think that the US has lagged behind much of the world in developing efficient and attractive passenger rail services? Because we already heard in the previous podcast that currently in the US it's very freight-centric, and basically you have some commuter trains from Amtrak, but basically there is not really like a long-distance passenger service which is working quite to a good extent.
Yeah, it probably comes down to a couple different factors all coalescing at the same time. So there's two, to use like some startup terms here, there were two incredibly disruptive technologies that came online about 100 years ago. The first one was the airplane, and then the second one was the automobile. And they kind of were the first real, I don't want to say threat, but alternative to rail travel, because for a very long time in this country, that was how most people traveled. And post-World War II, two technologies really came online that acted as a catalyst that caused people to take these new, airplanes and automobiles. The first one was the jet engine. The jet engine allowed airplanes to fly at a much higher speed and much higher speed and higher up, providing a more comfortable passenger experience. And the United States decided to invest heavily in that technology to get it up and running. In airports, they started springing up all over. The second technology was the interstate highway system. So with that, it became a lot more convenient to drive places. So essentially, rail, meanwhile, was left to kind of fend for itself and pay for its own infrastructure. Whereas if you were an airplane company, Pan Am, you weren't paying for the sky, right? It's the sky. It was open use. So with these two new technologies having a lot of green space, they grew tremendously, and passengers started taking them because it was a good experience. You show up, you get on the plane, you whatever, and it was faster and it was better than what rail was offering at the time. And so as a result, in the 60s, if you think about all the leaders at the time, they grew up taking rail to get around. And so there was this moral panic of, oh my gosh, America's going to lose its passenger rail system. And so the way this culminated was the formation of Amtrak, which is the current provider of passenger service. That's the primary shareholder is the United States federal government. And the way they did it is they basically said, hey, you guys need to join Amtrak. And so that's what kind of led to the situation we have today. When Amtrak was first formed, it was an open question how long it was going to exist. And as both cars and airplanes, as those two industries have matured and kind of reached their, I don't want to say breaking point, but the technologies are optimized. They're not getting much better at this point. You can't move many more passengers. There's not a lot of land to build and expand airports. It's just, they're getting very, very expensive to do. And passengers are tired of dealing with long drives or uncomfortable flights, canceled flights. And I think that's what's really driving people towards looking at alternatives like trains.
You hit an interesting point. I mean, Eisenhower experienced firsthand how important highway could be during the Second World War, and he introduced the interstate network in the US. And also like the Silk Road Initiative, along the route, new infrastructure merged and a new way of traveling, as you said, for instance, with the plane. But when it comes to rail and to a premium overnight service, what are the biggest barriers you have encountered?
Yeah, there's a lot of directions I can go. So there's kind of, people feel everyone has an opinion, right? And so you have to
In
listen.
mobility, everyone has an opinion.
Yeah. And so recognizing that this is something that a lot of people want, but not everybody. And that's okay. There are people who are like, that's dumb. I would never do that. That's fine. I don't really want you to have to do anything. And that's the whole point. It's about giving people options so they can choose amongst them. And it's kind of funny in the train conversation in the US is always funny, especially online. I always get tagged in stuff because there are people who are like, we need to get rid of cars, make everyone take the train and public transit. I am not one of those people. I believe in giving people options and letting them, if you want to drive and sit in traffic, that is your prerogative. I love driving. I don't like sitting in traffic. If I could take a train that it was conveniently comfortable, I would rather do that. It's more comfortable. It's not nearly as stressful as driving. But I also don't want to force anybody to do either of those things. So we have a unique kind of what I think of it as like a white space where trains are really defined in most people that live in countries where you have good train service or just regular train service or something like this. Where in the US, people, they don't even know that we have trains sometimes. It's kind of crazy. I mean, if you live in New York or Boston, the area on the long Northeast corridor, you grew up taking trains. But a lot of parts of the country, they don't know they have a train stop in their city. They're like, oh, I think we do. I don't know. It's just, it doesn't play a role. So we kind of have this weird, unique, once in a generation opportunity to really define what the American train experience is, outside of Amtrak. And so getting that right is like, okay, well, how do we make sure that it's cool and it's aspirational and people want to do it, and it's not just the I don't want to say it's a good quality experience for passengers so that they want to take it again and they keep coming back. So that's been one area of okay, how do we get the product execution correctly so that it resonates with the culture? And then the second is in working with different political entities around rail because, like you said, it's privately owned. We've had great experience working with Union Pacific in this case, and then working with some of the other smaller municipal owners of tracks. It's a new thing. Nobody's done this. Nobody alive has done this before. And so we're working with people who, it's a lot of, hey, we want to do this. We want to do this. We and making it clear, we're not trying to steal anybody's riders. We're trying to bring more riders into the system. And then once people kind of get it, they're like, oh, okay. They become much more enthusiastic about what we're doing.
You're focusing like of an overnight service because you want like to be an alternative to short haul flights or like very long drives on the road. And so you would like to start with a connection between Los Angeles and San Francisco. So can you give us a little bit more idea about this kind of service?
Yeah. So there's like two ways that I think about it. There's like, what's the general model that we're pretty confident in for an overnight train? It's our view that Americans will probably be willing to spend 8 to 12 hours on a train if they're sleeping for the majority of that. And then it's a very comfortable experience. So for this particular line, we're looking at the, too long to drive, too short to fly kind of distance. And on this first one, we expect people get on the train, 8, 9, maybe 10 o'clock at night. And then you have roughly 10 hours door to door, so you get on the train, you will have a couple stops so we can serve both kind of regions. And then you get on the train, you can go to the lounge car, which is pictured behind me, a rendering, and you can hang out, you can have a drink, you can whatever, socialize. You then can retire to your private sleeping accommodations, sleep overnight, wake up in the morning, have a coffee, some light food or whatever, and then get off the train so that you can be up and running. We will offer bathrooms, of course, and showers so that people can be well refreshed when they get off the train. The idea would be that you could get off of our train and walk straight to a business meeting, and you would be like, you'd feel fine. You're refreshed. You're ready to go, as opposed to like a red-eye flight where you get up and you're groggy as hell and you're like, okay, you maybe have a second cup of coffee to take the caffeine. The idea is that I want people to get off of our train and be refreshed and like optimistic about the future of the country.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever heard that whole like how a country's trains dictate are a sign of its future, or like, is it getting better or getting worse?
Yeah.
And if the trains aren't good, it's, questionable what the future looks like. I don't know how true that is, but I want people to feel optimistic about the future of America.
If you visit your webpage, you will find some really cool rendering about luxury cabins, a private shower and lounge wagon. Can you provide us a bit more insights about the setup of the wagons?
Yeah. You said it looks very luxurious, which is great. We don't intend to be a luxury service, only for the rich.
Premium.
Yeah. Premium is the way to think about it. And part of that has to do with the unique structure of the US market, like who's traveling, what are people paying? People are willing to pay particularly on this segment, people are willing to pay a premium for traveling, like first class flights. People do that. And it's a wealthy corridor. So people who go back and forth. Our view is kind of like when you're focused on mode shift. So getting people to try a new form of transportation, you got to make it really nice. So if you ever seen those like old Pan Am ads where they were trying to get people on the jets, everybody's dressed up. There's like a whole roast lunch and this whole thing. More recently, Tesla. So it's 2004 or 5 or whatever, and you want to sell an electric car right after GM just did the GM1, which was a mass market electric vehicle, and it totally failed, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so people are like, electric cars, nobody wants them. Well, what Tesla did is he realized, no, let's focus on the people who are willing to pay a premium for an electric car, make it super nice, take the money that we earn and reinvest it into figuring out how to make the electric car better at a cheaper cost. It's our view that we'll be able to do that the same for Dreamstar Lines, is it'll start off as a more premium service. But as we get more riders and as word gets out and people want to do it, we can reinvest into figuring out how to bring down our costs so that we can provide a higher quality service in the long term so that tickets become super competitive and an affordable way to travel. And so that's kind of like what's thought, like, why are we doing all these things is we need to justify the ticket price. And so In terms of how many carriages, it's looking like it'll be between 4 to 6 to start. We're still focused on the exact kind of numbers and how many train cars we can get online, how quickly. There'll be 4 different kind of accommodations we're looking at. So the first one is thinking about like the equivalent of like a really nice lie flat sleeper kind of pod. It's not really going to be a pod, but you might see them on like an Emirates or something like that for a long distance flight, first class where it's lie flat. You have this own private room. We'll have traditional bedrooms as well that sleep 2 in their own bathroom and shower. Not too dissimilar to what Amtrak is offering, but in kind of with our own unique Dreamstar Lines style. We'll also have family rooms, which will be great for families as well as group travelers who are willing to share.
I think that's also a good segment.
Yeah.
The families.
Have you ever tried flying with a car seat?
Yeah.
It's not a great experience. And then for we'll also offer like a suite as well. So this is for the person that's like, I want to do something awesome. It'll have like a queen bed, private bathroom, just a little bit bigger than like a traditional. And that's what our go-to-market strategy is today. You can see pictures of all of this on our website.
What are the range of a cost for one trip?
Pricing is always tricky because what the pricing environment will look like once we're online. But we're targeting, this is how we're thinking about it in terms of on this route. We want to be cheaper than the cost of a last minute flight, cheaper than the cost of a flight in a hotel booked ahead of time, cheaper than the cost of what Amtrak is currently charging for similar accommodations, and cheaper than there's some other services that are like a premium that Jet Suite X, cheaper than that. So
and first class ticket for the plane, obviously.
Yeah, that would be another comparable, actually. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, another comparable would be, what someone's paying for, a premium or a first class ticket today.
So how many passengers will be on your trains? Like 80?
It depends on how many people come into a room, but yeah, you could take 80.
And it's also like I take my car with the train service on the agenda?
Yes, that is one thing we plan to offer as well, so that people have an auto ferry service so they can bring their car with them. It will be optional. There are some models where it's required, but it's our view that maybe people don't want to do that. I know sometimes when I've traveled, I want to bring my car. Sometimes they don't. And if we can do that in a cost-effective way, we're still working through kind of the math there. But it looks like that's something that we'll be able to offer as well.
I also heard that pets are playing actually a role in the design as well. Is that right?
Americans love their pets. I imagine everywhere it does in the world. I just don't have as good data as I do on Americans. And so one of the things that came out when we were doing kind of our early research is that a pain point people have now with traveling is their ability to bring their pets or not. I've seen some interesting things on airplane that made me go, where like very large dogs have a seat. And I'm kind of like, can you imagine having to sit next to somebody's dog on an airplane that you like don't know?
But it's really like I never had the experience.
I literally took a picture because I couldn't believe it. The seat in front of me.
Let's talk about the company. At this very moment, I mean, you are the beginning, so the very early phase of a startup. But I just read that you already have like a cooperation with the BMW.
That's right. That's right. They're the ones who put together these renderings and the ones you see on the website. BMW's DesignWorks group.
What will you do actually different to Amtrak?
Amtrak has a lot of rules and regulations they have to follow because of their unique structure. So their primary shareholder is U.S. government, and they do not make a profit. So they require ongoing subsidies in order to be profitable. And they have a bunch of rules they have to follow. They have restrictions on what they can and can't do with their workers. We have a little bit more freedom and cultural flexibility in what decisions we can and can't make, because if at the end of the day, our customers are how we get money. So if our customers aren't happy with our product, we don't get money and we go out of business. Amtrak, because they straddle the line between a private industry and a public service, and to be clear, I'm not anti-Amtrak. I think it does play an important role within the whole rail ecosystem. But it just means that they have different restrictions and a different rule set that they're optimizing on other than raw profitability, which is, if you're a public service, that's probably pretty important, right? Like the post office nobody's being like, yeah, the post office shouldn't deliver to the guy who lives far away. He doesn't deserve to have mail. I think we can all agree the world's a better place, at least historically, when the post office was doing things like that. And I think Amtrak plays a similar role in kind of certain areas where they operate, where like, hey, these people don't have any other options, where I, as a private operator, could never go service a town that has 20 people. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
What about like the railroads and infrastructure manager? So basically there is sufficient space to run trains which are not blocking the cargo trains?
That's correct. So we're focused on using tracks that are kept as like, they're not frequently used. So that's one of the unique things in our model is we don't have to go the shortest distance on rail. We can afford to go somewhere that might not make sense for a daytime train to go, or it's not the shortest route. Because in our case, our passengers don't care about getting there in 6 hours. They care about going to bed in one city and waking up in another.
What about the climate and the green culture? Is that also a reason to take the train with an overnight service?
Yeah, I think there are like 5 reasons that people, like, how do people choose which way they travel or whatever? And climate is one of them. Some people really care about, hey, I want a more eco-friendly option. And trains, because you can move so many people, are a way to do that, especially with some of the newer technologies coming online. It's not clear to me what's going to happen with hydrogen, or even our battery is going to get good enough where we don't even have to worry about electrifying. We can just have battery packs. I don't know. Solid state batteries are interesting, but it's definitely a way to have a more green, climate friendly way to travel.
Let's talk about the timeline and the next milestones.
Our goal is to have it so anyone who's here for the 2028 Olympics will be able to take our trains.
2028.
Olympics, yeah. So the Olympics will be held in Los Angeles. So ideally, you could fly into SFO and take one of our trains down to LA.
2.5 years, right? And you are on track to do so.
We think so. It'll be tight, but we're going to make it happen.
Okay, and then what is then your plan? So you start with the first services, and what is then the ramp up? So you will go to other countries, or just give us a little bit an idea about what is the, like, say, 5 to 10 years future of Dreamstar Lines.
My view is that 10 years from now will be like the Japan railways of America, so that we can have great service all over the country. I'd love to see a network of Dreamstar Lines so that you can connect every major metro area and you could travel there taking one of our trains. How the market evolves beyond that's an open question. Maybe I'm a big snowboarder. I love going to the mountains. Amtrak runs a pretty successful ski train that runs from Denver to Winter Park. I would love to do a version of that for Dreamstar, where it's like, you go to bed in one city and you wake up and you're in the mountains. Like, that would be so cool. So maybe that's a direction we can go. Ultimately, it will be wherever the market is, right? We can't just, I think the era of build it and they will come is no longer the case. But maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, 10 years from now, you'll be able to take a Dreamstar train between any major metro cities that are within the medium distance segment. That's the vision.
And where are you today with your company? And are you looking for new investors?
Yeah, we've raised a little bit of money. We're in the planning phases right now. We're working with the track owners to use their segment of the tracks. Once we've secured the track operating agreements, then we move to the part of kind of starting the remanufacturing process.
Okay.
So we've identified rail cars that we think are good candidates for the retrofitting process. Yep. And that's kind of the next steps after we have the track agreements in place. If anyone is interested in investing with American Rail, I would definitely, I would be happy to speak with them.
What was your super magic moment where you said, okay, that's my moment, so I will continue? And on the other hand, what was the moment where you said, forget it, it will never work out?
I started it, forget it, it'll never work out. But what I basically did is I put together a financial model to say, all right, well, let's see what the numbers look like. And then, right, so like, follow me here in terms of how I'm thinking about this is like, all right, if the train's at 100% capacity and everyone's paying $1 billion a ticket, like, yeah, this will work. Okay, well, what if the train's at 40% capacity and people are only paying $50 a ticket. What does that look like? And so that's the process that I had to go through to whittle down and figure out, okay, where do we have like a real shot of having a sustainable ongoing business here? And after doing that, it was like, okay, it's clear that this is like on paper a really good idea. Then it's, okay, can we convince the track owners to let us use their tracks? And that has been a challenge because it just hasn't been done before.
That's the really great spirit to change the existing and to go further and to have with a bold vision and to offer new services to the Olympic Games in 2028. I will be for sure one of your first customers, and I really like the story that after 150 years, it looks like that premium night trains are coming back to the US. And that's RAILUP. So thank you very much and greetings to Orange Country.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. This was great.
What is the contribution to drive climate change?
I think the best way to do that is focus on reducing pollution, because climate change, unfortunately, is a really politically charged topic. So you have a bunch of people who believe in it and a bunch of people who don't. But we can all agree on is that we don't like pollution. Pollution sucks. There's a video of a turtle and it had a plastic straw like jammed up its nose and it went viral. And like overnight across America, you can't get plastic straws anymore. Now it's all the paper ones that like disintegrate. So it's really clear that stuff like that moves the needle for people and causes real change. Building the technologies that offer superior alternatives to whatever is viewed as, being bad for climate change, right? So if you really care about CO2 emissions, you should figure out a way to provide technologies that are better than whatever CO2 emissions are, that also are greener. That's kind of my view.
The ball is in your court. What is the next step to drive change?
Getting people on the train, having them shift to greener alternatives than flying or driving.
What's the takeaway from this episode?
My key takeaway is that even very bold visions of the past can be reintroduced in modern times, and that this is the very beginning of Dreamstar Lines. It was great to hear that Dominic was inspired by the night train services in Europe and Japan, and that they started his journey by doing the math and constantly asking why it should not work out. I was surprised to learn that capacity on the rail network is available and that a good combination of various categories could lead to a strong business case. Of course, Dominic and his team still need to prove the concept, as the company is in the very early stage. But launching these new services already for the upcoming Olympic Games in 2028 in Los Angeles, it's a bold vision. And that's the spirit of RAILUP, to think big and change the rail ecosystem for better.
This podcast connects innovators and leaders worldwide to shape the future ecosystem of rail. RAILUP by Sebastian Sperker.